introduce the speakers panel when we get there. Because it's hard to catch names, we have follow-up references which for you in chat. So they'll appear in the chat window. And anytime in the evening, you can download a written list of those follow-up references and then check out details about all our guests afterwards. This evening, we're here because of our interest in the tree sitters high above the Brunette River near the boundaries of New Westminster and Coquitlam. The sitters are opposing the construction of the Trans Mountain expansion, and we'll hear from them in their videos. So let's get started. The setting for the tree sit is high above Holmes Creek, which is a tributary of the Brunette River, which runs between Burnaby Lake and the Fraser River. To really give you an idea of what the Brunette is like today, we have a trailer of a prize-winning film called
Disappeared, the voice.
The completed film is a prize winner already and is doing the rounds of the film festivals across the country, so it's not available to us, but Marina Dodis, the filmmaker, is here to describe it and to be part of the panel for Q&A. She has a long list of credentials as a still photographer and has more recently taken up storytelling with film. So if you could cue that trailer, please, Marie.
This time of year, I like to come here to look to see if the salmon are coming back.
There's 120 kilometers of creeks in Vancouver that have been covered with pavement. You can imagine this creek being run underneath the asphalt. This is what you lose.
The Brunette watershed had all 7 species of salmon at one time, and it went from all 7 to 0.
Local governments said that river's dead.
For the last 2 or 3 years, there's been salmon spawning for the first time in many decades. What's really astonishing about this place is where it is.
It's part of the miracle of salmon. It's just an amazing animal.
Marina, would you please tell us more about this beautiful river system and what you learned and what we can learn from seeing the movie?
Great, thank you everybody. It's great to be here. And you know, this was my dream with trying to make a film, was to reach people and invite them to become curious about what's happening in the city. And I basically have followed my own experience of the discovery of salmon. And so that's what I used as a storyline, basically. So I saw it in a newspaper, in a news article on the CBC, and, you know, bicycled about 6 or 7 blocks from my East Van home and saw salmon in adjacent to the Superstore parking lot. So it was a remarkable experience to see it. Something that is so iconic to BC, but yet that many people haven't actually seen, which is a salmon run occurring in the heart of such a big metropolis. And I started to explore the area as all the different facets of it. So as an outdoors person, I had done a lot of hiking and backcountry skiing, etc., kayaking, but mostly been searching out, you know, quote unquote pristine areas, and kind of had not that much knowledge about what was happening within the city limits as far as environment. I was also quite influenced by some work that I had done with city planners around how important it is to have people have experiences that aren't something that you have to go far away to have. And also some of the results of research, which is that if something is near you in your own backyard, you might well have a stronger relationship to it than if it was, you know, something, you know, if I had made a film about salmon, you know, hundreds of miles away. So I also had, you know, the amazing experience of witnessing how much stream keepers had been the heart of the story, because they had been largely ignored by levels of government. Government had basically given up on the waterway up until, you know, well into the 70s. And only when the runs collapsed during that time did they start to realize and research how every little stream actually has an importance to salmon. So one of the things about salmon is that they have genetics that basically are associated with specific areas. And so if a stream becomes completely blocked or, you know, so polluted that it can't sustain a run anymore, you're actually losing genetic diversity. And so all of these places are important. So I wanted to make a film that would invite people to explore and become curious about the place in a way that was immersive and that wasn't necessarily too heavy on information in the sense of sort of like as a teaching, like as an educational tool, but I wanted it to have, you know, enough in it that you could become engaged and maybe even learn a few things about salmon. So because I'm a kind of frustrated biologist.
Beautiful film. It is a visually beautiful film. It's really quite gorgeous and very moving. I think that's part of the power of the message of it.
Thank you. So that's always very gratifying to hear that, because again, like, I think it's important to think, wow, like this is happening in the city and I don't need to go far to have that kind of an amazing experience. Some of the most recent years have had over 1,000 salmon come up through, particularly into Stony Creek.
Wow.
So it's quite something to see.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you there and you'll be around for the Q&A.
Yep.
And people can ask you questions then.
Great.
Thank you very much. I hope that people will write their questions in the chat. They will all be, you just need to look at the chat button down below at the bottom of your screen and then type away and the question will appear in the sidebar. And at the end of the session, there will be 20 minutes devoted to answering questions, and all four of our panel, actually now 5 members of our panel, will be available to answer those questions, and I'll introduce those people to you at the time. Okay, I would like to now just move to the next stage. How did we get into this? We were really moved by Dr. Tim Tuccaro of Simon Fraser. He's a physician scientist, professor and associate dean of research in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser, and he was the pioneer tree sitter. We had hoped to show his video and have him present, but that was not possible. However, if you download the follow-up references from chat, which will appear at some point soon, you can easily find his message to Justin Trudeau, which is the video that we would have chosen to show. Dr. Tim stayed up for 11 days. The second sitter in the TMX, the Stop TMX camp at the creek was Kurtis Baute, who's a Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science, who works to increase the science literacy of mostly young people, but he's got terrific videos on his website on all kinds of things. And his mission is also to help address global challenges. He's an accomplished freelance video maker, and this that we're going to see is a compilation taken from 3 days of his sit. So if you could cue that up, please, Marie. There he gets. Not the most flattering picture. There we go. We don't have sound, Marie.
I'm currently about 20 meters above the ground. It's a long way down. And I am suspended on this portaledge between two trees, one over there and another way over there. And the reason that I'm here is because those trees are scheduled to be cut down. But I'm not here in order just to protect those trees. See, the reason that they're scheduled to be cut is because there is a plan to build a pipeline, an oil pipeline, specifically the Trans Mountain Expansion pipeline, right here, right beneath me. And I'm occupying this canopy in protest of that. And this won't be a video about those trees. It won't even be a video about the Trans Mountain Pipeline, but a video about all pipelines and a video about our climate, because we can't be building more pipelines and expect to have a habitable future on this planet. So I'm up here risking my personal safety. It is a long way down. And I'm up here risking being arrested because this is the most important issue of our time. And there is something that we can do about it. I'm currently 20 meters off the ground in a tree canopy, and I'm here in Coast Salish territory in British Columbia. The reason I'm here is to protest the expansion of a pipeline called Trans Mountain, and that's why I'm up here. This is day 5, video 5. Yesterday was the hottest day of the year here. It was actually so hot that I sweat so much that my fingers became wrinkly. I didn't even know that was possible, but apparently that's a thing. But the heat was a reminder to me that this 2020, this year, is one of the hottest years ever on the record. And it was also a reminder that I've been very lucky, I've been very privileged, very fortunate to be able to escape the heat when I need to. When it gets hot, normally when I'm not in a tent in the air, I can just turn on the air conditioning, or I can go to a nearby lake. But a lot of people are not that fortunate. Being up here yesterday during that intense heat was a reminder that climate change does not and will not affect everyone equally. We are all in this together, except some of us have air conditioning and some of us don't. And while that's partly a metaphor for climate more generally, there are also very literally billions of people that will soon be or are already experiencing deadly heat, and those people can't afford air conditioners. In the climate movement, we often talk about climate migrants. These are people that already or will soon live in locations that are unlivable due to heat or fires or floods or famine. And the thing is that I think that that term is somewhat of a euphemism, because a lot of those people aren't able to simply migrate. They can't afford to buy a plane ticket and go somewhere and buy a new home. Many people are already dying due to climate change, and many more will. In the face of climate change, we must now, more than ever, open our borders rather than building walls. And that is especially true when you consider that most of the carbon that we've added to the atmosphere has been added by the global north, the richest countries in the world. And those are the same countries that are the least affected by the climate crisis. We're already seeing how environmental disasters disproportionately affect people of color and people living in poverty. And one tragic example of that is that during Hurricane Katrina, most of the deaths in the United States were Black people. The simple fact is that we can't have climate justice without social justice. So while I'm up here to stop a pipeline, the Trans Mountain expansion, the climate movement is not just fighting for a transition to renewable energy, but it's fighting for a transition that is equitable, a transition that doesn't leave anyone behind. Here comes the heat again. We have a lot of work to do. We need to create a society that recognizes people's basic human rights and that values them. That means one that recognizes that Black lives matter, and one that works to end centuries of systematic racial injustice and colonial oppression. We need to create free healthcare and education and help people that are currently working in fossil fuel intensive industries to transition to a green, renewable economy. And I recognize that by being up here, I am preventing some of those very people from doing their jobs, and I'm truly sorry for that inconvenience. But the fact is that there's a lot more than our jobs that are at stake here. We're talking about the end of our civilization. We're talking about the end of millions or billions of people's lives. And that's why I'm up here risking my personal safety and risking being arrested. I do take this seriously. Another fantasy people have is that if we just plant some trees, then we can continue with business as usual. But even if we planted trillions of trees, our planet will continue to destabilize unless we stop burning fossil fuels. And that's especially true if we continue to cut trees down at a faster rate than we even plant them. There are no magical technologies coming to save us. Nuclear fusion, if it ever comes, will take decades. Geoengineering is this idea that we can just put more stuff into the atmosphere and that will fix everything for us. And that to me is absolutely terrifying, because the unforeseen consequences of doing that could be worse than climate change. We just need to keep the oil in the ground, and we already have the options and the alternatives to do that. We have strategies like a Green New Deal or Project Drawdown that would work if we just take action on them. It's not going to be easy or cheap, and it will mean changing more than just how we get our energy. We will need to transform our society to be more equitable, but that would be a great thing, and it is possible. We just need to act on it. A recent report that came out shows that we are currently on track for the worst case scenario for climate change. We're on track for over 4 degrees of warming by the end of the century, and that is not a climate hellscape that I will accept. So I will be up here 20 meters up in a tree canopy using my body to stop this pipeline. And I'm asking you to do 3 things. First, you can call or email your local representative and tell them that you do not support pipelines like this one or any sort of oil infrastructure. Tell them that your vote relies on them pushing for climate action. Number 2, search for climate action organizations near you. I'll leave some links in the description. And number 3, we need to get the word out. So share this video or start a conversation about climate change and how we need to stop pipelines like the Trans Mountain expansion. Thanks for watching.
The third sitter was Dr. Christine Thuring, who's a PhD and instructor at BCIT's Center for Architectural Ecology. Her current research is on green roofs. This video has the title that really resonates particularly with Unitarian principles, called the Web of Life, I'm sorry, the Web of Life. So if you would cue that, please, Marie.
Whoops, just give me one sec here.
Mm-hmm.
This one is, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Greetings from the aerial camp. My second full day up here, and it's sunny, and I slept well, and I've just been blessed by wonderful people who are just so inspired. Yeah, so big ups to all the land and water defenders, all the lovers of life. I want to acknowledge that our camp is located on unceded ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Coquitlam, Stolo, Tsleil-Waututh, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Squamish nations. Hope I did that right. With gratitude to all my relations. So today I was visited by some chickadees who are so sweet in the trees. And yeah, it's a bit of a wonderful woodland of Holmes Creek. And reflecting on, you know, why I'm up here, and I just, web of life and biodiversity, that's a really meaningful thing for me anyway. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. So, you know, we are all part of a web, actually. Everything's connected. All forms of life are connected and dependent on each other. So basically, when we care for other beings, we care for ourselves. And that's why we might as well care for other beings as though they were ourselves. Exchanging self and other is a very profound practice. I highly recommend it to anyone. It's challenging, but it's so beautiful. So just to make it concrete, you know, we know that whales regulate the climate. There's a wonderful video narrated by George Monbiot by Sustainable Human on YouTube. Whales regulate the climate. Wild bees pollinate everything. We take them for granted. We don't even know that there's so many bees out there, but they do so much for us. At the end of the day, we need them more than they need us. And that's a real point of humility that I think we can all kind of remind ourselves every day. So you may recall I'm up here as part of a big effort to stop Trans Mountain expansion, which is a pipeline sending bituminous crude to markets that don't really exist anymore. The social license for this project does not exist. It's basically being forced through a colonial capitalist model, disregarding Indigenous sovereignty and land rights, and making a big mess of things as well. There's oil spills that are constantly happening, and of course the insurers are backing out. One of the tar sands companies at the Baskin Oil is about to go bankrupt. So, like, we need to just stop this now. Enough. Keep it in the ground. So on the theme of biodiversity, you know, the tar sands are in boreal peatland, which is like the most amazing carbon sink on the face of the planet. You know, it rivals the Amazon. And to be digging that up and extracting this extremely expensive, I mean, expensive is an inappropriate term really, but extracting this tar sand, which is what it's called, it's a bitumen, it's really thick, really heavy, very expensive to process, and as a result, very expensive to buy as well. So peatland and boreal forests are much more, infinitely more valuable in the ground rather than anywhere else. So let's just keep that intact. Stop the tar sands, full stop. There's been a huge call to do so for years since that first opened. It's a scar on the face of the planet, on the face of our civilization, I dare say. It's horrendous. So bringing it back to love of life and biodiversity, we're also in an extinction crisis right now. Don't know if you know, I didn't really make it in the big news, but the news doesn't cover much today anyway of great meaning, other than car crashes and what have you. So I just wanted to point out that a big issue on pipeline construction as well is habitat loss. And the biggest driver of extinctions these days is habitat loss and land use change. So to me, that would suggest that let's just stop destroying habitat and converting it into capitalist projects that leave a huge legacy of pollution and waste, and doesn't leave a very positive future for the generations to come either. The last thing I want to say is, yeah, there's some huge trees out here, and I just wanted to make a call out to the fact that BC is currently still logging old growth forest. Two wonderful gents recently hosted or held a hunger strike in Nanaimo, demanding that their MPs respond to their request to halt old growth logging. They ended it because there was no response from the government. Old growth is so valuable and similar to peatland, you know, like huge carbon sink, massive benefit to the climate regulation and just the biospheric regulation of the planet, similar to the Amazon. Carbon sequestration is massive by these old trees. And again, the habitat they create is just, it's so unique. You cannot regrow an old growth forest. There's species that are completely dependent on old growth. You know, spotted owl is one, marbled murgulet is another. Those just happen to be some birds, but you know, let's not even get into all the other forms of life that are reliant on intact old growth rainforest. So the last thing I'm going to say is, in spirit of supporting the ending of old growth logging, I shake my head. Because you know what? Hair grows back. Old growth does not. Peace and solidarity with my brothers and sisters. I see you.
So we can see that the reasons are many and interconnected and complex and not easily put into one little square box. So I'm going to now go to our panel, and I'll introduce all 5 members, and then I'll ask Maya and Carl to add anything that maybe was not covered in terms of information given by Kurtis or by Christine. So I'll start with introductions here. Maya comes to us from Raven Trust. Could you wave, Maya, so that everybody knows who you are? Thanks. She's an author, a journalist, an anthropologist, a coordinator, and she'll be starting her PhD studies at UVic this fall. Coming with her tonight is Anna. Where is Anna? There she is. Anna, who comes to us also from Raven, and Anna is the campaign director. What is the campaigns director, and will be backing up Maya in the Q&A or in giving extra information. Carl Perrin is a lifelong Unitarian and very well known in our congregation. Could you wave, please, Carl? Thanks. He is very well known in our community and the Suzuki elders as an environmental activist of long standing, and is also a member of Broke, which has a particular point of view, since we're talking about the area close to Burnaby. It's of importance to us all. John Boyle is, could you wave, John? Thanks. Is an active member of this congregation, and he has had a career in and is also still active in environmental planning and assessment services to support sustainable development in Canada and internationally. And Marina Dodis is a filmmaker and resident of East Vancouver, there she is, whose documentary, The Return, about the restoration of the Brunette River, we're waiting to see after we just saw a very short trailer of it, but she'll take questions about the river itself and her making of that. So I'd like to start first with Maya and then Carl, to fill in areas of significance, aspects of the TMX project and its construction that were not covered in the videos we saw. And then after 10 minutes, we'll switch to a Q&A, which will include all 5 members of the of the panel. And I would urge you to please write your questions. You need to look at the chat button and then type away, and your question will appear in the sidebar. And in the background, Cindy Cashin is waiting and looking for your questions, and she will be posing them to the members of the panel. So to start, Maya, what do you see that we haven't covered in those videos?
Well, I am going to speak on behalf of Raven's involvement in organizational capacity with this long-term fight that has been to stop Trans Mountain and before Kinder Morgan. And Raven, for some context, for those who might not be too familiar, is the only nonprofit organization in Canada doing this strategic work of viewing a way to create change and create justice with these harmful industrial projects, and supporting Indigenous rights by fundraising and really rallying people power to get these communities access to the court system, because usually a tactic of industry is to delay and outspend these communities to the point where they have to choose between if they're going to maintain their immediate livelihoods or if they will maintain their lands, waters, and ways of life for future generations by using what limited funds and resources these communities have. And also, especially given COVID and with the pandemic, a lot of First Nation communities are even more hard hit and more strapped for resources right now. So it's really putting communities with their backs up against the wall of being able to defend and really stave off what can feel like endless corporate and industrial development and exploitation, extraction on their lands and waters. So with Raven, we're really in it for the long haul because we recognize that these legal challenges take time and they take resources. And we've all seen that with this fight to stop Trans Mountain. And with Raven, our involvement has been the Pull Together campaign that's raised over $1 million now over the course of several years to support the nations who have been standing up to stop this project. And we had incredible success in 2019 when everyone's favorite word at the time was quash, because the pipeline was quashed by the courts. And now it's, you know, we've had some disappointing news over the summer and the last couple of months, but again, the nations are appealing and Coldwater is leading the way with trying to protect their aquifer that would be impacted by the pipeline. So there's just a lot of facets and a diversity of tactics that I think is really important to recognize when it comes to stopping these really harmful projects, and in this case, Trans Mountain Pipeline, and when it comes to supporting Indigenous rights. And even over the summer, given COVID and the inability to organize together in person, we've somehow managed to have incredible success and enthusiasm with online virtual folk fests, music gatherings. They've raised over $10,000. And so it's amazing to see that we can still express and put action behind solidarity, even from our own homes in the confines of quarantine and the limitations of a pandemic. And it's that much more encouraging and inspiring that people are willing to continue rallying in community and rallying their resources during such times of uncertainty, because that's how strong this conviction is that we have to stand behind Indigenous rights and sovereignty, and that this pipeline must be stopped. And so that's kind of what we've been really going with behind the scenes at Raven for this last summer. We don't get deterred by what a court says, you know, even if something isn't being heard in the way that it should be or upheld in the way that it should be. Nations can appeal. We can find different ways to move around it, get different strategy. And I would just say that over the years, I think the legal long haul has just demonstrated the tenacity and the perseverance and the unwavering resolve that these nations have to defend their lands and waters. And that is incredibly inspiring and mobilizing for everybody who can witness that. And I just want to open the space too to Anna if there's anything else that she would like to add, because she's been involved in this even longer than I have with Raven.
Anna, you need to unmute yourself, or maybe Marie, you need to unmute her.
Yes, I got there. And thank you, Maya, and thank you all. It's really great to be back in the Unitarian space. I was in your beautiful sanctuary when I first started working for Raven at the end of, I think it was either December 2016 or February 2017, when you gave us a very generous gift, and I went to pick it up and met some of you. And so it's really great to be back here. I'm also hearing from Catherine that there is a limited time. So I'm just gonna very briefly say that what I would want to bring, and maybe we can talk about that in the Q&A, is more about Coldwater Nation. Because we, as you probably all know, as much as I do about the pipeline, there were 3 nations that were fighting it in court: Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Coldwater. And they all kind of, almost all got to the end of the line when the Supreme Court of Canada declined to hear their appeal. So there is so that's all part of the judicial review that was happening, and there's other legal steps that are very costly that Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh are contemplating, and that's a big community consultation process, and they need to make sure that their members are all in favor of putting a lot more money into some really heavy-hitting legal strategies. But Coldwater is a case apart, because all they actually want, and it's not, it's not the usual story of, climate justice and go for everything. Like, they're a small nation in the Coldwater Valley, which is near, in the Nicola River Valley, Merritt. So all they really want is for the pipeline to bypass their aquifer. They're really not in it to completely stop the pipeline. That's not the resources they have.
Anna, could we put you into a breakout room specifically about these legal issues? That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'd like to ask Carl to give us something of the situation for Broke and the tank farms.
Okay, so originally in 2012, when I joined Broke, which stands for Burnaby Residents Opposing Kinder Morgan Expansion, my motivation was simply climate change. Even though I live on Burnaby Mountain and I live above the tank farm, in fact, if there is a fire at the tank farm, I'll be inhaling the smoke. And that's one of the major problems. Before I go into that, I just wanted to mention that I was at the pre-sit site today, and there's a young teacher from New Westminster, Maureen, who is up in the tree, and she's been there for, I think, 4 nights. And the tree sitting is continuing till September 15th. Anyway, she looked pretty happy today. So, but I also learned you have to be strong enough to lift your own weight when you're jacking yourself up to the top. So I think that leaves me out. Anyway, in terms of the tank farm, what I want to focus on quickly is the dangers that were discovered in 2018. This was a engineer, Gordon Dunnett, who looked into the problems in terms of a earthquake. And then he was backed up by recently retired professor of earth sciences, John Clegg, who is a seismologist. And so, he has the data to back him up. And this has to do with the 1953 tanks, which were never analyzed as part of the assessment of the 14 new tanks that are being built very close to each other, right next to the existing tanks. So the old tanks were never analyzed in terms of their ability to withstand an earthquake. And in fact, they're so close to the new tanks and to each other that a fire could easily ignite from one tank to another. And the smoke would come up to where I live right here, and also SFU, Simon Fraser University, which is just a couple blocks from where I am right now. Altogether, there's daytime population up to 30,000 people up here. And we would all be trapped if there was a fire at the intersection. So the old tanks, there are 6 that have floating roofs. And those floating roofs are quite dangerous in an earthquake because the shape of the tank is going to be changed by the sloshing of the contents back and forth in an earthquake. There's lateral motion underneath the tank. The contents are sloshing back and forth. And because there's no fixed roof, the tanks deform. And the roof rubs against the sides, and that sparks fires. And also there's sloshing outside that means that there's fire going outside as well. This was discovered by Gordon Dunnett. So we're going to the new president of SFU, Joy Johnson. She's just started September 1st. And the Faculty Association is going to look into whether this is a safe place to work. And you have to kind of have some kind of written thing that says, hey, this is dangerous. So they have that in terms of their contracts, that this is not a safe place to work. Likewise with the other employees at SFU. So that's another opening. Of course, the big prize is climate change. We just want to stop the pipeline, period. But the local, what gets people's attention locally, and this is very much a NIMBY type of thing, but it works, is we don't want to be inhaling toxic smoke from that tank farm. And also we don't want the kids going that are at the school, Forest Grove Elementary School, which is less than 200 meters from the tank farm. We don't want them to be dying of sulfur dioxide inhalation, which after 30 seconds would cause a 50% fatality. So we've got all the data, all the science. All we need to do is follow the science. And unfortunately, under the NEB, that was ignored. And we're trying to keep pushing the science because we don't want to die. Good place to stop.
Thank you very much, Carl. Marie, I'm going to consult with you. We have 13 minutes now of Q&A. Would it be better to immediately go to the breakout rooms for people to ask specific questions of specific people or to discuss in small groups?
I think that there's a nice size group here that we could have a pretty good discussion together.
Okay, well then let's just stick with the program and we'll go to the Q&A. So Cindy, do you want to put those questions? And I'll just encourage everybody to, if you've got any question at all, you just need to click on your chat button and you can start typing.
The chat is at the bottom of your screen usually, and you can just go ahead and chat it, start writing in there. I only have 2 questions so far. So I'll start with the first one that I have is from Tamiko. What can we do to help the tree sitters? Or if they are a temporary action, what can we do to help out? So does anybody wants to jump on that one? Just put your hand up from any of the panelists and go ahead and give us your thoughts.
Okay, I'll start. So there is a support camp for the tree sit, and the support camp is just under where the platform is up in the trees. And I was checking out some things today, and it's pretty simple. Good things go up and waste comes down. And so the support camp is there to send good things up and to deal with the waste that comes down. And it's very well organized, but we need volunteers to spend 2 hours at a time to be on the cell phone in case the person up in the trees needs some support of some kind, that they can contact us right there and we can provide the support that's needed. So I think Dogwood has a schedule for people to sign up for 2 hours. So I don't have that. I've just been going there myself. I went there today and put up a banner on the fence there. There are some, there has been a little bit of vandalism there, but otherwise, you know, the local people are in support. Also at Lower Hume Park, which is right near walking distance from the tree sit, there's an information booth at the entrance. So I think just visiting that site, I just went there today and there were about 3 people there, and I just sat down in the lawn chairs and had a chat with them. And I think that's something that people can do without making a 2-hour commitment.
Since I've done that, if people are interested, you can call Linny, which I give you, and you can text her and go on a roster. So I'll be there, for example, every Monday from 4:30 to 6:30. So Linny, I think it's through Dogwood. I think that's how I found her number. Let me just, Lenny, so Lenny number is, Lenny, sorry, 604-842 0854 or 56. There must be a mistake, but it's either 54 or 56.
Thank you very much, Huguette. I think
I'll try to find out actually.
Okay, maybe
right
you could.
now.
That would be great.
Can you put it in the chat, Huguette, if you find it? Just type it into the chat, please. Excellent. Okay, and then I have another question here from Maya to everyone, or from me to everyone, actually, sorry. Anna, how can we help Coldwater First Nations specifically? You mentioned that before, and I think we have a few minutes for you to talk a bit more about that now. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Here we go. Yeah, thank you for that question. So because Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish are mostly now focused on a new legal case, which will be its own campaign, any money that comes into the Pull Together campaign will be mostly going to Coldwater. There are still some invoices from the other nations, but it will be mostly focusing on Coldwater. And what the ace in the hole they hold is condition 39 of the TMX project, which says that the proponent has to conduct a full study of the Coldwater aquifer and the alternative routes around it. And they did such a piss poor job that even Transport Canada said, agreed with Coldwater that this study doesn't meet the condition 39 because it doesn't have any field data. It was all computer generated models. And what that means, not just for Coldwater, but for the whole pipeline fight and the strategy around that, is that if the energy regulator, which is expected to give a decision any minute now, if they say, that's true, condition 39 is not met, then nothing can happen. The project has to be paused while they do the study, which will take another 6 to 8 months. And those delays are important because, okay, condition 39 is not going to stop the pipeline by itself, but all the other strategies, and we haven't heard much about the insurance work that's happening with pressuring insurance companies to drop TMX. All this other work will have much more time to flourish. So it actually will contribute to stopping the pipeline. So in terms of helping Coldwater, I would encourage you to just keep on with the Raven news, because the minute we have a decision from the energy regulator, we will be putting it out. And then cold water they will either win, and that's a big delay, or they will lose, and then there will be a judicial review that they will be launching. So its own mini case around condition 39. So please watch the Raven space and then contribute to pulltogether.ca, and it will go toward cold water's fight.
Okay, that was actually my next question was, does Raven have a specific fund for cold water? If you don't mind, maybe just typing that in the chat so people can have that more concretely afterwards.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And just to quickly add, if people are curious about ways to support cold water and rally their resources and community, we have been putting this to practice this summer with figuring out how to fundraise and do that with COVID. So always feel free to contact us and reach out. And there's just endless creative ways to really rally support for them, even though it's hard to get people together for fundraisers right now.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and then also, I was wondering, was there some kind of a drum circle coming up for the tree sitters? I thought I read something about that. Maybe somebody could say a bit more if they're aware of the details of that.
That was 5 to 7 today.
Okay, sorry, too late. Okay, thank you.
There may be another celebration after September 15th.
Okay, and is there a place that they can look to get the updates on that? Is there a specific place they should look for?
Well, in terms of the bigger UCV environment group, I'll send information there.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll also add that on the what's it called, follow-up references, there's a list of organizations that have been supporting the Stop TMX, and you can look on any of their websites and find out what's going on through any of those. Raven has a particularly good thing called News, and Dogwood also has I think it's a weekly update of information. So if you want to be sort of up to the moment on what's going on.
Great, and additionally, there is a PDF in the chat that people can look on to give them lots of information of different links.
That's the PDF I was talking about, yeah. They follow up references. So you just have to click the blue arrow and it will download to you and your computer, and you'll get that information. Let's see. We still have a few minutes, but I think that what...
I see Hanno's hand is up. Maybe Hanno can ask her question since she hasn't typed it.
Yeah.
You have to unmute.
I just want to mention that on Friday at 10 o'clock, Ruth Walmsley and her group plus other groups are meeting at the SkyTrain station, Burnaby Lakes, Stirling, and they will march or walk meditatively to the camp, have a picnic there, and then walk back. The whole thing will be 16 kilometers, but you can, if it's too much for you, you can do less. You can go to the, after the lunch, you can go to the station and go home, but I will try to do that on Friday. So it's on Friday at 10, and if you do the whole thing, it will be 16 kilometers of meditative walking. And I think they would love as many people as possible to publicize those tree sitters, because I talk more and more to people and they haven't got a clue. They have not even known about it. And even people that are environmentally inclined do not know about it. So spreading the word is important.
I wish I had asked Maya directly about her interview with the Danish news person. Just very quickly say that this is a very credible news person from Denmark who had associations with the Tsleil-Waututh Tooth already. He was coming into the country to do more work on that, and he was stopped at the border and was actually sent back to Denmark. So there's been very little coverage in our news, and when the international reporters try to get the news, they are kept out of the country. So it's this communication of what is going on is very important. So I would ask you to remember the three things that Kurtis said. Contact your personal, maybe you don't have a personal relationship with your representative, but you can start one and write a good, start with praise. There's ways of writing letters. You should talk to John Boyle. He writes an excellent letter. Join other organizations. Listen to what's happening on the ground. And the third one is talk about this with all the people you meet. It's a bit of an art. You have to learn how to do that with people who don't want to listen, but you can only learn to do it by practicing it. So get started small scale with people that you know that maybe are not quite so, holding up their hand to tell you to not talk. Anyway, I wanted to, this point, say a very big thank you to all our guests on the panel and all our Zooming guests. I'm so glad that you came to our first action evening. I especially want to acknowledge Marie, our technical wizard down at the bottom there. Please wave, Marie. And to Cindy Cashin, who's been doing a ton of stuff behind the scenes, Lynn Armstrong, and Tomiko Suzuki, without whom this never would have happened. So I hope you go away from this evening with a rekindled sense of the immediacy and the beauty and the fragility and toughness of our living environment, and with raised expectations about what the reality of stopping more damage is and reversing damage. Please take Kurtis's points seriously. So that's the end of our recording, and I don't think we'll